Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, wherever you happen to be watching this video from, welcome back to the channel. I recently read that Malawi plans on introducing an inheritance tax as well as a, what can we call it, a foreign or global tax for any Malawian citizen who happens to be outside of the country earning money. There will be a tax introduced where they have to remit part of their earnings to the Malawian government. Now, this has obviously been met with some ire, some anger. People are not really happy about more taxes being introduced when they are not being given basic services. Typically, that's the deal. That's the arrangement. When you enter into an arrangement with the government where you are a citizen, and in exchange for your citizenry, the protection that the government gives you, the services, public services that they give you access to, you pay a little bit of tax. That's supposed to be the arrangement. But when you are not receiving any goods, you're not receiving security, if you get captured in a foreign territory, I don't know if the Malawian government is coming to rescue you. If they're not offering these services, then they are not fulfilling their side of the contract, are they? Now, so this means that people are a little bit upset about more taxes being introduced. Now, why are they introducing more tax? Why does the government need to try and get more revenue? Well, because they're broke. And there's an issue with inflation. Malawi is kind of caught in what I can only describe as an infinite inflation loop, where the policies that they enact to counter inflation actually exacerbate the situation. So, what do I mean by this? In economic theory, we have the idea that demand pull inflation, that is inflation that is caused by demand. There being a lot of demand for the same services pushes the prices up of those goods and services, right? So it's like bidding on a vehicle. For example, you go to an auction, there are several people interested in this vehicle. Each one puts a bid up. Say we start at $1,000, but because it's a hot commodity, someone else will bid a bit more for it, 1,100, 1,200, and so on. So because there's a number of people demanding the same services, the price goes up. The same is true with aggregate demand. If you have a lot of demand in an economy, then that pushes the prices up. So like, yeah, if you have demand for a certain job, for example, let's say data analysts are a hot commodity, and each company is trying to bid to get the best data analysts. That pushes the salary of a data analyst up. And the same is true for any commodity, any good, any service. Aggregate demand increases the price, and that is demand pull inflation. So the theory is, if you increase an interest rate, this is a monetary policy technique where you increase the interest rate, so the Reserve Bank or the central bank of your economy increases its interest rate, its policy rate. This is to cool down aggregate demand because you're increasing the price of borrowing. Therefore, it makes money more expensive. So making money more expensive is supposed to cool down spending, because people have less access or more expensive access to that money. They naturally spend less. But this tool only works if you are in fact experiencing demand pull inflation. There's another type of inflation that is caused by the supply shocks, or if the cost of supply increases, and that is called cost push inflation. So if the price of various commodities, the supply of them goes up for whatever reason, let's say you have a shock to the oil supply, so the price of crude oil, the price of energy becomes more expensive. That is cost push inflation. If you have, for example, a war going on in Russia and Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine rather, and Ukraine, which is the main supplier of fertilizer in the world, fertilizer costs go up because they cannot export as they once could. That pushes the price of fertilizer up, and that affects all the countries that they supply this fertilizer to. So, if you're in a situation with cost push inflation, the price of commodities has gone up, the price of forex has gone up, the price of all your imports goes up, then monetary policy, i.e. increasing the policy rate, is not very effective in combating cost push inflation. Keep on saying cost push. Oh my goodness. Anyway, when you're in a situation like that, what happens? Because you've increased the price of borrowing, all these companies that require imports to function, sometimes they need to get a line of credit to be able to bring those supplies in, those imports in. So they have to borrow, and they're borrowing at a higher rate. What are they going to do if they're borrowing at a higher rate to bring in their inventory? They're going to push that price on to the consumer. Or worse yet, what if the main borrower is the government? What if it's the government that's doing most of the borrowing? It means they have to pay back at a higher rate because the policy rate is higher. And because the government has to pay back their loans or what they've borrowed at a higher rate, how do they do that? How does a government finance itself? Well, either by printing money or by taxing. So if they're taxing people, or if they have more debt they've accumulated because they have to pay more back in interest, what are they going to do? They're either going to increase the amount of money that they're printing, or they're going to increase taxes, or both. So what do you have in Malawi? What happens if you increase money printing? It causes inflation because you are printing more of the money. That means it becomes less valuable. It becomes worth less as there's more supply of it. And you're also increasing taxes. So you have people paying more in tax so that you can pay back that loan. So what does that cause? It causes even more inflation because the cost of living goes up because you have to pay more taxes. So that's why I say there's an infinite inflation loop. You see how it circles back? You have this monetary policy where you increase the interest rate because the demand, or rather because the inflation is not caused by demand, it's caused by supply. It doesn't really bring inflation down, but it also passes that cost on to suppliers and the government, who then pass it on to the consumer, and then inflation increases even more. And what do they do to combat that inflation? They push the policy rate even higher, and you have this continuous loop. And that's the loop that the country is stuck in. So, how do you break the loop? How do you break the cycle? Well, to me, I would say that the Reserve Bank of Malawi would probably need to eliminate inflation targeting as its goal. Because if you have inflation targeting as your central bank's goal, what they're going to do is use the policy rate to try and curb inflation. But policy rate, monetary policy, it's ineffective when it comes to cost push inflation. So I think they need to abandon that. I think instead they need to start targeting economic growth. How do you target economic growth? You make money cheap. You make money cheap so that you can spend more, or rather that borrowing money becomes easier so that more can be spent on infrastructure spending. That is the idea. So I think that the entire government needs to start targeting economic growth rather than trying to control inflation. But that's just my 2 cents. This is just a guy walking around in the park, man. So tell me what your thoughts are. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. For now, I'm just gonna continue my walk elsewhere. This was just a nice, quiet place to think, to walk and to think. So let's try this new format. I don't know. How do you feel about this new format? I kind of like it. As long as I can find a nice, quiet place, I think I might be able to bring more of this to you. I hope that the microphone is capturing my voice properly and it's not too much wind buffering. You let me know. You let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, this is Iskonomics. I'll catch you in the next video.